Welcome to SHOWstudio. It's our third panel discussion of the Haute Couture season, and it's a very special discussion for lots of reasons. Firstly, because we're going to be talking about Chanel, which is always an amazing, exciting show to discuss, but also because I've got amazing Stephen Doherty working away behind me, creating an incredible artwork on our wall, which is depicting all the different couture that we've seen so far. So over here we've got Schiaparelli, and then in the centre we've got Dior, so Chanel will be sort of taking shape behind us. I've also got an incredible set of women with me to talk about what's going on in Paris and to discuss Chanel and Karl Lagerfeld a bit more. But before we kick things off, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Frances.
Frances Corner, and I'm head of the London College of Fashion.
So no competition at all. Grace Woodward, stylist, and soon to be shop owner.
Wow. Hilary Alexander, freelance writer and fashion person.
And all-round legend.
Yes.
Caroline Charles, dress designer.
I'm going to start by picking on you, Caroline. I'm sorry, because I know it's your first discussion with us, but I'd like to talk about what sort of haute couture means to a modern shopper, to modern women. And I know you've dressed some fantastic women who will also perhaps have bought couture. What do you think that people are looking for now, the shopper? I mean, not the fashion journalist and the press, the shopper when they look at couture.
Well, I don't think the shopper is involved with couture. I think the client is. It's a very, very different, it's a very privé arrangement. And I think that what she sees when she gets there is fitters and people who engineer by hand clothes that are quite different from ready-to-wear, however luxurious the ready-to-wear might be. But it's absolutely for the person. And could they get backstage into the workrooms, they'd find, and they were a regular customer, they'd find mannequins that were padded up or reduced for them, so they could always order from some foreign part, come for a fitting. Of course, fittings are a big issue. At least 2, 4, depends. So it's a completely different bit of the industry.
Do we wish sometimes we could see more of that side? Because when we look at Couture Week, especially, you know, when you're looking at it online, or even if you attend as a member of the press, you see a lot of shows and spectacles, great sets, which is obviously very applicable to Chanel, but you don't see much of the petit man, you don't see that side of it. Do we wish that more of that came through? Because it is such an incredible craft.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
To me, it's the most important spirit of fashion in itself, clothes making and the structure. And I think it's since ready to wear, we're forgetting about the structure because our bodies now have to be to shape shapeless clothes rather than the other way around. You know, at one point we had clothes made for our bodies. I think it's a shame we don't see more of that.
So were you able to get back into the workrooms? Even in the days when I was an apprentice in couture, there was obviously a cutter, there was obviously the grande dame of the particular workroom, tailoring or dressmaking or millinery. But I was the bottom of the bottom pile. And there was someone on a sewing machine. We always worked in threes, and I was the littlest of the littles. And my job was to hand over sew the linings, and to hand over sew and make the shoulder pads, and to herringbone on the canvas if it was inside, because nothing was sticky. Probably still isn't. I doubt it. But it's a huge team effort, the couture. And you know, pre-show everybody's there all night because never ready, and it's just entirely different from what I do, or we all really do now, which is equally skilled but totally different. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, that makes me happy. But it's lovely to think about that idea of working with your hands, and we've talked about this on several couture panels before, and that's something that perhaps I don't think, and it would be really interesting to get your perspective on this, Frances, is something that young people going into fashion now have a thirst to do. You know, this idea of working with your hands is something that is very respectful and a great trade. And that seems quite Parisian to me. I wonder if students coming into London colleges want to sort of spend hours and hours embroidering, or if it is more about the finished product for them.
I think it's a mixture, obviously, because you've got so many different aspects of the industry now, and I think that's again one of the things that's really interesting, because obviously fashion you know, means so many different things, and obviously couture is a really, really important part of it. But there are quite a lot of students who want that, to understand about the sort of bespoke nature, or more about that than just the ready to wear, and are prepared to, you know, dedicate the time that they need to be able to acquire the skills, because I think that's the, you know, obviously Caroline's just referred to it. I mean, you start and you have to absolutely, you know, spend hours and hours doing the buttonholes, and then you might be able to do something else, and then so that investment in time. But we do have a number of courses, obviously not like couture level, but obviously a lot of our footwear accessories courses, some of our tailoring, they are very much about learning those skills. And I think it's not just the students, but also the general public. I think the sort of fascination with all of the big sort of fashion exhibitions that there are, there's a real thirst actually to see how things are made. You think about Hermès and others who show some of these things on their websites, and that's what people is almost, I think, a sort of reaction to everything being so digital and in a way so technological, that people really want to understand that those other skills haven't been lost.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot and Ready to Wear, this idea of the rise of craft and people wanting to see things that look like they were handmade or they were one-offs, and you see that with a lot of young designers who we've talked about before, but people like Phoebe English who like producing things that are one-offs, and working with their hands a bit more.
I don't think it's particularly a Parisian thing. Valentino's ateliers in Rome, for example, which I visited, you'll see maybe over 100 people all working by hand. I was recently in Beirut visiting Elie Saab and the Lebanese couturier, and he has a vast atelier, 600 to 800 couture clients a year, and there's just dozens and dozens of people working on every aspect. It's wondrous to behold, and it is a team effort, as you say.
Yes, it is.
I think also it's interesting because I went to visit Ralph Russo, who are based in Knightsbridge, who again have an international client base, and again all the everything's being made there. One of the problems is again finding the people to be able to, who want to invest this sort of time and learn the skills and so on. I think that again is one of the challenges that we're going to, wherever you are is going to be facing.
I think not even about couture, the nature of hands having lovingly crafted a product. I wonder how much it affects the general fashion consumer, not anybody. You go to couture because you are a tiny percentage of people who can afford it. Fashion Revolution Day, which wasn't that long ago, was also challenging people to think about who has touched their garments. So it would be great for couture to have a broader reach, so people think about craft from a very inexpensive piece to all the way up to the top end, because all garments are being touched by human hands.
That's an interesting point to make. It's also interesting in the context of a house like Chanel and what we see Karl Lagerfeld do there, because there is a big focus on modernising couture with what he's doing, whether it's trainers on the runway or a lot of the sort of funner, more playful, more quirky aspects that he's brought into couture. And I guess it's difficult, isn't it, to find that balance, because we talked about this yesterday on some of our panels. You don't, in a way, want ready to wear to be filtering up to couture, because traditionally couture always should have been sort of the laboratory of ideas where ideas filter down. But I think we are seeing that at a house like Chanel. We're seeing what girls on the street are doing, or what's happening in ready to wear, sort of infiltrate what he's doing there. How do you guys feel about that? Do we like to see sort of trainers on a couture runway? Do you think it's playful and it makes couture relevant, or is it worrying?
There's no doubt that Karl reflects the street. And the last 2 or 3 seasons, it's more and more, I think. And that's really the fun of it. And I presume that there is some sold to young girls who think it's what they want. But I think, just to go back to the point of hand sewing, I think it's about beading here instead of beading in India. And although Chanel, of course, beaded in India and made the pearls in India and so on. But I think there is a coming home of handmade. I mean, the John Lewis partnership selling a line of adorable little sewing machines in different colours, which all get bought because they're pretty. I don't know if any of my grandchildren ever touch them. But nevertheless, there is a mood to make now.
I mean, across the panels that we've done here, or I've done couture before, and I know that you have, and Colin McDowell always loves to bring up the argument: is couture relevant at all?
I'm tired of that argument.
So it's really interesting that you bring up the calmness and the trainers on the catwalk, because there's one hand, to me it springs to mind gimmicky, but is that modernising couture so it's fun and it's relevant and it's cool and it's out of reach? I mean, I felt when I watched Dior yesterday, there felt like it was a lot of ready to wear. I mean, probably the best pair of black trousers you'll ever have in your entire life, because they're made for you. But it wasn't, some of the looks, I was a bit like, well, I wanted to see the embellishment, I wanted to see the fantasy, because that's what you look to couture for, even though the buyer is probably going, I want the best pair of trousers in the whole world.
I think the, thinking about the Chanel, the last show that he did with the shopping trolleys, and then obviously Georgia Asda did the sort of spoof, the following day. Which, so in a way, yes, there is, but you begin to play with something else, which I mean, obviously that's what he's wanting to do, but I'm not sure. I think for me, yes, the trainers are okay, but they do look gimmicky, and you think, well, it's not really relevant. I think the most interesting thing is when you're pushing couture to have a relevance because of the way it's designed, because of its relationship to a client's body, because it's still keeping those skills really.
I think we cannot get away from the fact that it's a very expensive pursuit, being a shopper. So it is an elitist arrangement, which has spread to the young because of new money in different parts of the world. Whereas you say it's never cold, so does it matter?
But
what season?
I think the way Carl does it, surely there's a valid point to make, that he is reaching a wider audience, even if they're not necessarily buying.
Exactly.
They're
He's
aware
speaking a language.
Of the language of Haute Couture, and actually if they're interested in rough and fashion, maybe they'll Google, find out what it means, and understand, wow,
Exactly.
this is different, handmade, crafted, painstaking hours, and get an appreciation of what this is all about.
It's interesting that there's two strands of relevance when you talk about it. There's making it relevant to those new markets and the new shoppers who actually are going to buy the couture, that very small minority, but then there's also, as you say, relevance just in form of educating people and getting people excited about couture, and if putting trainers on it does mean young people start Googling couture and being interested in it and researching it a bit.
Even if young people got a load of sequins and sewed them onto their own trainers.
Which they do. They do that.
That's what it's about. But also I kind of feel like my expectation of it all is it needs to be breathtaking. That's what I expect from couture.
And I think, and I'm not sure that that's what's happening at the moment. I mean, not with either the Chanel or, as you say, the Dior. I thought there were some beautiful shapes. I mean, the use of the sort of crinoline. So there was something yesterday with the Dior, and then sort of thinking about the Schiaparelli as well. I think I was quite interested in that, not because of the sort of shapes that were being referenced and the materials that were being used. Again, not sure that all of it was 100% successful, but actually I was more interested in it because of what the experimentation that was going on, than feeling a little bit like I do with Chanel, that sometimes it is this big machine, and that's what you're being sort of drawn into, and it's a bit formulaic, whereas I just feel, I want to be surprised, and even if I don't like it, actually it's the fact that there are combinations of things going on with materials and sorts of techniques that you can't see anywhere else.
But I think alongside, perhaps Carl's fondness for the odd gimmick, you've also got to balance what he's done with Métier des Arts. The way he's kept alive.
He's kept,
the glove
definitely.
makers, the handmade silk flowers, the button makers,
that's
milliners. I mean, all kinds of skills and little workrooms which otherwise would perhaps just disappear in a puff of smoke.
Yeah, I quite agree. But the other thing about Carl is that it's about Miss Nelevine. The young follow. Absolutely, they follow these top girls, particularly her. And so then they're imbibing his work that way as well. And they're buying white strapless all-in-ones to go to prom parties because they've seen on their screens wonderful things, and they buy them H&M?
Yeah, it's interesting that though.
They do.
Yeah.
They're marvellous.
I spent the day yesterday with Medium Ketchup, obviously it's ready to wear rather than couture, but I spoke to them about what they make, and they said that it's really interesting actually to hear a designer say this themselves. They say, yes, we want people to buy it, that is an aspect of it. They're like, it's not actually really about that for us, it's about proposing an idea and giving an option. And he was like, it's just as valid and it's just as flattering for us. Both of them said this. If young people imitate the look, if they look at it and they try and dress like that or make something to resemble it. So, and it is about, to them, creating this option of dressing and this idea of being, rather than about selling product. And I found that very interesting because I think we are seeing that more and more and more, this idea of suggesting to people to try and imitate a look or buy into something rather than just buying a product.
Buy the thing.
Yeah.
I think that luxury fashion houses would have an issue with that, but it's interesting, Medium Kirchhoff particularly because their look is it's like a subculture in itself. You know, it's like those girls that particularly really sign up to it and really want to dress like that, and their clothes aren't readily available either. So I kind of understand where they're coming from, because people you can't find their clothes to buy them. So I think that concept fashion has always run through the decades of fashion. However, you see those people disappear because it is an industry, it's a commercial industry.
But I do think we're seeing that filter up. I think the trainers was an element of that. I do think, you know, Carl was aware that those trainers perhaps wouldn't sell to, but he knew that he'd get young girls wearing sparkly trainers and jazzy trainers around.
Well, I guess they've got a perfume too. They've got hundreds of perfumes that can support their house. You can play like that.
And I bet Kanye and Kim had a pair of Chanel.
Yeah, Givenchy.
I saw Cara, she was like out and about in town yesterday, and she was wearing like jeans and a hoodie, and then she had like an amazing Chanel beanie on, and you think it is exciting to see young people kind of engage with the house and think why they want it, and at least, you know, if it gets people talking about couture, I guess that's always important. Should we see what he's done this season?
Yes.
So it's a big collection. I saw on Instagram just before, obviously Sam McKnight's done the hair, and he said he wanted it to be like an 80s boy band, which I think is quite funny. You can kind of see that.
You can see that,
yeah.
Sort of a bit brass.
It's interesting because that first look, it almost looks like pixels, you know, there's something very almost playing with the digital about that.
And is the left-hand one, do you think, flat sequins? The grey and white and black
I think that's
checkerboard?
a tweed. Yeah.
It's a tweed,
I would say.
with fringe at the bottom.
I'm always fascinated by the shoe choices, even before the trainers, because sometimes I find them really odd. So I'm kind of focused on them, and then I'm like, oh yeah, there's the tweed.
Is that gold leggings kind of underneath the white?
It looks like a leather boot that's going up to her thigh.
Or is it?
Yeah.
But that's the most becoming neckline on the left. That white neckline stands away.
Yeah.
Audrey Hepburn.
Audrey, exactly.
That's a continuation from the same collar with the
Those
waist,
corset,
the corseted waist.
But I think that's something very interesting about what he does in these incredibly classic, very beautiful, like that neckline. You haven't seen that for a while. That feels kind of new to see that on a runway, even though it is, as you say, something that all women wear. It's very flattering.
It's very good.
That suit is beautiful.
Yes, this neckline's keeping going, isn't it?
Yeah. And they're flat shoes, aren't they? With
they look like thongs,
ribbons around the ankle.
I love the shorts with the little shorts.
Well, I mean, it's a sort of theme of sort of skirts and shorts, or coats or jackets and skirt and shorts.
Yeah, that's really pretty. That middle coat, isn't it?
Oh, I like the one on the right. It's a bit Dr. Zhivago.
It's a shaved beaver trim.
No, this is the same block. It's a very nice coat, this.
It's a lovely coat.
Flattened right through to the hem. That's clever. And the shoulder's very round but padded.
And
it's very, very nice.
While his work feels youthful, you do look at it and you can see a life for it with people who aren't just kind of the Caras and the Jordans.
Yeah, we'd like to wear that coat.
It's almost gimmick free at the moment. There's no supermarket.
There's a big gimmick coming.
Is there? Oh, okay.
It was quite fabulous.
But you see, I can see everyone in the high street, from George to Kurt Geiger, doing a thong sandal like that with a big ankle tie bow.
But you can even just see girls tying ribbons around their ankles, which I think is quite
sweet. Now it gets tricky. The middle one, the madam suit.
Yes.
Cut away. Everybody looks hippie. It's an horrible gold brocade.
If a model on a catwalk can't make that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's not
and especially with those sort of funny shorts
and
as
the
well.
one on the right's even more tricky.
There's always a few in a Chanel show.
And another
like,
one.
No.
It's really tricky.
Yes. Heavy tweed, stand-up collar.
Yeah, too much.
But this is where it gets a bit more futuristic, which is, he often does something where it feels slightly less classic.
That's very polite, futuristic. I think that's a nice thing to say. But the coat's back again, but with more fringe on it.
So
yeah, he's definitely in winter.
Yes.
This is definitely a winter show.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it feels, I actually personally find it odd now when designers do design winter shows when they're showing autumn winter, because you think, fashion is so global now. It almost feels like that's just what we call seasons, but it's quite odd to make a collection that's wintry.
But if you couldn't have a Chanel show without a tweed, so it's kind of screwed.
But especially a Linton tweed from England.
Oh, absolutely.
You're on your way to your house in South France, and you stop off your fittings as you go through Paris, and on the way back, you go and have your last fittings, and the goods are then delivered.
And then you go and have lunch at Maxime's.
Oh, sure, of course.
But the theme is, yes, it's all, it's so many short, it's interesting, isn't it, the sort of look with either, you know, the coat and the shorts or the skirt and the
But
shorts.
they would never. They all exist without the shorts.
No, they do.
Well,
That's why I keep imagining
yeah.
it without it, because you can see immediately. So in a way, it's the shorts which are, again, coming back to the idea of the youth market. But you take those out and you know, wear them with.
But you can even see that nodding at kind of different forms of dress that you see around the world, you know, whether it's trousers being worn under long tunic tops, you know, it does suggest...
The layering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm getting a distinct Axl Rose, Guns N' Roses sort
Really?
of vibe. Yes.
Really? Where?
Well, kind of cycle short effect.
Yeah.
And I can't stop thinking of Axl Rose.
But the heads are wonderful. Every girl looks beautiful with this headdress,
Yeah,
whatever
it's
they've done to
fantastic.
it.
Sam McKnight is amazing. I
fantastic,
think
good.
his hair's
I
absolutely
love that
incredible.
middle suit.
I love this one on the end. There's
I like the
something
one-
starting
I
to
like
happen.
the- I like the one on the
It's
end,
a
the
different,
fringing,
like a,
yeah.
and has it got a raised neck? There's there's something.
Oh, the one
starting
on the
to
left.
I think what's interesting with Carl as well that we perhaps haven't discussed already is he is one of those few designers that really gets a concept and does run with it in a collection.
Yeah.
And I know that seems very obvious, but you see that less and less now. You know,
Yeah,
designers
it's
trying to
people
tick boxes,
less pieces,
and it's less
people
about this
pleasing,
is
yeah.
my idea.
No, it's variations on a theme, isn't it? And so he really does push it to the nth, and I think that's what's
This
quite
is looking
exciting. I mean,
quite
this is,
green.
it is.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
that Britishness to it. You know, it's
Yeah.
almost a bit punky in the palette, and then this almost kind of
A little eccentric.
Yeah, but what do you think is some boy in the studio has been allowed to have 3 dresses in the show and another one, so that's what's not consistent. It's not just one
No.
hand. But he's very generous, Carl, with his young designers, really generous and gives them a go. And you can see this is somebody having a go.
Look at that
Different.
That's
rather
amazing.
the
I
one
didn't
at
know
the
that.
ghastly red thing on the end.
Do you not like that?
Yeah, I like
No.
No, I
Do
agree.
my hips
Yeah,
look
I-
big in this? Gigantic.
But it's not even that. It's
Yeah.
not even disguising it. You know, it's not flattering
Oh.
for the arms either.
Heavens, now what?
The Yeti.
Is there, you know, is there a kind of African thing going on? You know, the sort of the Maasai wear a sort of tweedy check, not tweedy check.
I see it's very British. I see it's very, very kind of punky.
It's very McQueen.
Yeah.
It's interesting that number 27
Yeah.
because we saw those sleeves at Schiaparelli as well. And you do kind of think, who is the woman that wears
Wears
those
them.
sleeves?
Well, she's not wearing them. They come off in the
Yeah.
in the workroom later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
the number
bad.
28 is quite an interesting balance of sort of textures and shapes.
Only for the fashion brave.
Yeah.
But a girl would wear the piece on the right,
Yes.
with whether it's lame or leather, the skirt.
But I think
it's very nice with that little top.
The
crop
whole
top.
point about the fashion brave is quite interesting in the context of couture, isn't it? If you are wanting to push the ideas and the fantasy.
However, do the wearers? I mean, I've never been to one of the social engagements that you would imagine women wear couture for, and they order it because they know it's coming up. Off the top of my head, I only know Daphne Guinness wears completely bonkers stuff. So is it that the couture buyer is this woman, or is it that she is the much more pared down? It's the business
Sophisticated.
I think it.
Classic.
I think though you have showpieces in couture
Yeah.
as much as you have them in ready to wear. I think, and perhaps those will be the pieces that get shot a lot.
A lot,
Perhaps,
yes, for
yeah.
editorial,
But do you know what? Do you know
red
how hard
carpet.
it is to shoot couture?
Yeah,
To get it to the UK.
Everyone does it in the middle of the night when they're in Paris. So the most important publications get it at like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock.
Because
and then the others get it
in a
the middle of the
way,
night.
I feel like this epitomises fashion editorial. It's
Yeah.
the fantasy. It's like total bonkersness. But you can't shoot them. It's a nightmare.
What about this set? What do you
I
think
find
about
number
these?
31 very interesting because it reminds me
Yes.
a lot of Simone Rocha, what she did.
Yes.
She just did that Elizabethan
Yes.
collection, the portraiture, and that look with the embroidery and the embellishment around the collar and around the sleeves, and that exact shape. It's
And the
very,
rounded
very
skirt.
her. Yeah, exactly. If you showed me that image and it perhaps didn't have the Sam McKnight hair, I think I'd say that was a Simone dress. Which
It's
is
the bubble
interesting.
skirt she likes.
Yeah.
But in the 60s, we used to have. I worked for a photographer, a fashion photographer, and we used to have to take the clothes, as you say, Tony Rawlinson, and we were always shooting on the bridge. If you look at all the shots, because it's the only place where there was any light, you could get them, but you only had them for an hour, 2 o'clock in the
you
morning.
had to do it really, really fast.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting though. I kind of love that everything's not as available with the couture.
Yes.
It makes it a little
Well,
less.
it's the one. There is only one.
Yeah, see that the boot we saw at
The
the,
boots,
start.
yeah,
It's
so
a kind of a
yeah.
thigh high.
But still with a bow.
They are a continuing motif very much. Chanel.
But also in that period we're talking about, where the shoots were in the middle of the night, the American stores would buy what was it called? Line for line. They would buy the right to reproduce. In very limited. So that's why it was also protected, because they'd sold.
It's so interesting that pre-ready-to-wear period as well, where you see couture being sold for patterns, and it's just such a different world to what we see now, and it does. You understand why people question the relevance of couture when you think of it and how it used to be sort of. It did set the trends. It really did.
Is that feathers? Do you think?
No, I think
it's like tulle.
Yeah.
Tulle?
You know what's no Cara Delevingne here? Are we waiting for the bride? Do you think?
I think she must come later.
She must be. Or she ran late. Didn't get
I think
there.
also the setting's
She was
quite.
asleep.
Yes, the setting's very interesting considering some of the previous shows. It feels, I think it wasn't referencing Le Corbusier, and so it's very, very simple and pared back, and somehow that's also reflected in the collection itself,
well.
isn't it? Really, there's no. I mean, you say there's perhaps a gimmick coming, but essentially, it is very much about looking at the clothes, and they are quite pared back, really.
I think he also does a different thing. All designers now are hyper aware of the photographs, and if the photographs aren't right, then you've got the whole show wrong. So this is what we're getting, but there will be a huge amount of entertainment for the guests as well. I'm guessing.
What I find interesting as well is this proposition of proper day wear for couture clients, because I think that's something that we're seeing. You saw at Dior as well, but perhaps the kind of. I know we all love the opulent gowns and the incredible sort of.
But how often do women really wear them?
But women who buy couture, I presume
they have normal lives as well.
Have normal lives as well, and I think it's interesting to see a designer really sort of focus on things that can be worn to a cocktail party or a great suit, rather than just doing a show-stopping gown.
That's why I think Raf is doing so well at Dior. I think that really is what his customers want. For us, it's a bit disappointing.
But there were some beautiful shapes yesterday.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I think the man who's paid wants the wife standing up there next to him in the splendour. Wants to score it with all his...
Do you think that's still the way with most couture clients? That it's the man
some,
buying?
It's the man paying.
The evening ones, not the day.
Yeah.
I think the evening ones.
That's interesting.
I mean, these don't score. They've got to be really...
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Valentino was always amazing at the day suit. The neat suit or the dress and jacket for lunch. He had it absolutely nailed.
I really, really like this. I think it's
because
I really, really like Simone.
Hilary and I spoke just before. She was saying that she was really looking forward to it. I feel a little bit stung of late with the gimmicks, and I was a bit like, usually I'm a Carlette. I'm like, but of late I've been a bit like, oh God, what are we going to get this time? But this is really, really pulled back. And again, you're just looking at the dresses, going, wow, what's kind of happening here?
I agree. I'm much happier because the last couple I've felt this is just too much, too gimmicky. And yes, okay, it might be about trying to extend the audience, but I think in the age of social media, you don't need to do those sorts of gimmicks. It should be about the clothes, and I think, and again, also with couture, really showing off the
skills.
Absolutely, and you're seeing that. You're seeing that with
that
middle
for a woman
dress.
with a microphone who's singing something on some big
No,
screen.
that middle dress is
me at home with a hairbrush.
A young Shirley Bassey.
Yeah, Shirley Bassey.
We said we wanted embellishment, and we've got
here we are. Yeah. I mean, look at the train. This is the thing, you never see the back shots, and I always go on about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And seeing the train on this, the silver sequin thing, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Are you impressed with the craft, Caroline, of what you're
Yes, definitely. I think it's lovely. The middle one is a perfect young person's wedding dress. Sweet when maybe she had some lace over her or something in the ceremony.
I feel like this one feels youthful, but it feels less aggressively, as you said, gimmicky, less aggressively youthful, and more like it's actually just catering perhaps to a younger couture client rather than trying to I know we've got the cycling shorts in there, but it doesn't feel too much like a pastiche of what young people are wearing.
But also the sort of bag slung across as well, again, is a way of making it feel as though it will appeal to the youth market. It feels more casual, but then they're very beautiful.
The cycling shorts are dealing with the length problem. I'm not suggesting that he's trying to sell anything, but a woman with the money to buy that, beginning ones, can see that just on her knee she's going to be fine.
Exactly.
It's But
And
now,
that's
now
the-
it's Gestalt, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now this is Winter Wonderland.
That's incredible. 55. I love that.
That wonderful neckline.
That's beautiful. too.
Yes.
That's another singer's dress. Lily Allen
Yeah, or Florence Welch.
of Florence
Yeah.
Welch, gorgeous.
The other thing that amazes me is the sheer volume of pieces. I mean, it's
incredible.
amazing.
It's like 75.
70
altogether.
is
incredible.
extraordinary.
I like also how it's moved from being very wintry, we said at the start with the tweeds and the grey, and now we've just got this huge white section. It's actually really, really lovely, because if you think, I think couture and bridal wear, there is that thing where you think it feels appropriate.
Once in a lifetime,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So
But it is frustrating not being able to see the backs, because you
I
can
know.
see
Look at
that
that,
one
I know.
on the
Yeah,
back
that's
of the, the one
That's
from
what I
High
always complain
59,
about
because
it.
you don't really get a full picture at all.
Can we come back next week and just do reverse?
yeah, just do that. We can. Have we got some have we got close-ups in? Yeah, so we can have a quick look.
That's why I think that fashion shows will never die. That even though we can do this, which is great digitally, that being at a fashion show, hearing the music, understanding the whole theatre of it, how it used to be, and it's interesting that nobody's live streaming this season.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting that people are pulling back from that. Which it does feel strange for a house like Chanel, especially because these images will go everywhere. They'll be on Tumblr, they'll be on Instagram, and you think the amount of work that went into one of those gowns for it to just be completely remembered just as this one static, quite haphazard shot that was caught by a
2D,
photographer.
yeah.
Also, you want to see how the textile moves.
Yes.
Whether,
Exactly.
Well,
whether-
luckily they do it. Style.com has their move this,
Yeah.
every time. That's great, that button.
So sweet, that middle one.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so nice.
Again, it's very useful, that sort of bolero sort of
Yeah.
look, isn't it?
But then I think
Absolutely sweet.
even just the ones with the sleeves, you can imagine how a couture client, I always love doing this when you look at the pieces, how they'd ask for it to be changed, if they
adjusted,
wanted
yes.
it longer or shorter, or
Yeah.
with a longer sleeve.
I really like that 66 as well.
Yeah, because that almost
Very
plays with
simple.
the flat
Yeah,
image,
it
because it's
does.
like a drawing
Yeah,
of a
it
dress.
is, yes.
It's quite lovely.
I think the bag over the shoulder gives a kind of more useful.
It does, yeah.
Sort
What
of
are you
street
for?
feel, doesn't
I'm
it?
nearly 40. I'd wear a bag like that.
It's just
but I guess
practical,
it's,
isn't it? But I think it's this idea of stopping this process of othering the couture client and being like, actually, they are women who walk around, who go to the shop, who are busy. They might have incredibly wonderful lives. They might have drivers. They might have millions and millions of pounds to spend on couture, but they still need to walk around and do something. They're not this kind of prized possession that the couture woman might have been before. When it
but
was
then there's a lot of white for that.
Yeah.
White is
Yeah.
obviously completely impractical
Yeah.
You're not going to
for
go
anything.
So it's quite hard to tell. The bride was pregnant, so it was a pregnant bride to close, which is
I would have never have got that.
Or like the Van Eyck painting.
which I think is quite Carl. That's
Yeah.
riffing on a kind of very
Is it Cara?
no.
Definitely not.
It's funny because Chloe Delavine's she's been around being quite pregnant as
Yeah.
well, so I don't wonder if he got it from there.
No, that
There's more
famous
of the
painting, The
close-ups.
Marriage of Arnolfini, Van Eyck.
When I, yeah, it's very high.
She's a super
Yeah,
pregnant bride.
She is. It's in the National Gallery.
Yes, yeah,
Shotgun wedding.
but sort of in the 15th, 16th century.
But it's quite nice
That
to
must
see
have been
him.
really shocking back then.
It's kind of a funny social play rather than doing something like Trainers, which is more of a sartorial pun. I think it's quite nice to see him.
Yes, because he's done the lesbian wedding.
Yeah,
He's always got to do something, and I guess you do look for it like, oh, what now?
yeah.
So these headdresses have got little beanies on the back of the head from
Yeah.
which the hair is coming.
So
Or
it's
the feathers. Look,
Yeah.
So it's Culture Club.
it is.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah, boy George. Yeah, sweet.
I think the footwear is going to be really popular.
Yeah, I think that footwear's really,
as you were saying, Hilary, that's going to be
Yeah.
I
something
think
people-
it's pair of
it's already
flip-flops.
been around.
It is.
I mean, I know it'll be around as it because
Yeah, it will just be a copy. It will just be
But there you are,
reinvented
it's an
again.
air hostess hat.
Yes.
Put on backwards.
I really like that
Or-
hat. It is very 80s boy band.
Yes.
It really
Or
is.
even sort of Thumboy 3. Thumboy 3. Oh, these are great, the detail shots.
yeah.
Goodness for them.
But Caroline was just saying they basically look like a pair of flip-flops
They are.
with ribbons.
Yeah, with
Which I
ribbons.
guess is an equivalent to
Yeah.
a trainer in a way, isn't it?
But again, it's lovely to,
DIY.
But it's interesting to do that for autumn winter because I was saying how fashion is so global and you think in lots of countries you wear flip flops and sandals all year round, and it's interesting to see that. Especially
No
when you think-
heels.
Yeah, no heels.
No heels, hooray.
Yeah.
But when we style fashion shows, we never think about the season. We just think about how can we get it together fast enough, where's the ribbon, what can we do to make it sweet. But it's a flip-flop with a ribbon.
Yeah.
It's like we all do that with ballet shoes endlessly. And strip
I
it up
really
and
love.
make it-
Yeah, there's something
very,
very,
very
feminine
pretty.
and girly about
It's
that.
really
and I think
pretty.
there's an interesting girlishness.
Yeah,
to
and
it.
here's coming now the silver hat on the back. It's a miner's helmet going
I really
back.
want to have that staying on. I think Sam must have used a lot of hairpins to make that
And
work.
here's a lace one. That's
It's
Yeah.
also really brave about doing an entire show with flat shoes because models do not walk well.
That's
No,
why
in
they're
flat
not walking.
shoes.
That's why it's not moving. You've got it.
Yeah.
Static.
Stop the live stream. I mean,
That's why it's not live stream.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see
that's
the
what I mean.
because they're like.
Yeah. But they look wonderful in their flats. But you're right, they hate going down a catwalk.
Yeah.
It doesn't look attractive
No,
when,
it
you're,
doesn't.
when you're watching a show
No.
and the girls are in
But these
flats.
girls look just fine. Great girls.
It's
aren't
wonderful
they?
to see all the work actually in
really
these
Yeah, it's
details.
incredible.
Russia.
I just love. Can we just go back to 18 a little bit? So you can say I love that, just the way it looks like it's fastened on a little button. It's almost
Yeah.
childlike, you know how you'd get dressed in a little
Yeah.
pinafore.
Beautiful. Well, I
Yeah,
think
there's a
it's
very
great
kind
show,
of
this.
sort of there is almost quite innocent.
Yeah, I think there's
feeling about
definitely
the
an
whole thing.
innocence with all that white, and that's why I think the pregnant bride is even more kind of playful and witty because
Yeah.
it is very innocent. All that white, all that kind of.
But it's sort of
buttoned
Anna
up.
Karenina
It
as
is.
well, isn't it?
Look at that wonderful
Yeah.
Yeah, at the back
coat
view,
with
hooray.
a little
This is very Anna Karenina.
brocade or
I think it's.
fabulous.
Yeah.
I would wear that.
And then
Yeah.
suddenly
Coat
there's
in
a
New
little
York
bit of the
with it.
fringing from this season, which is crept in here.
Mm.
I noticed it in their autumn winter.
But I think that also could be from when he did the show in Edinburgh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking seeing.
There's an old sample
elements
that's crept
of
in. It's just not part of the show. They were short of one.
But that top for 24 is amazing.
Yeah, it's really. I think there's something playfully cartoonish about some of this with the silhouettes where it is quite flat. You know, that stands up far above her clavicle, and the dress that looked like it was drawn. It's quite.
Do you know what? You know about the boy band hair. There's something about who was the illustrator that did the Duran Duran cover? It's not Richard Gray. It was that was very kind of like a Grace Jones type. Really sort of. The silhouette is really wide, and you've got a tiny little head. Like the proportions has been very, you know, really messed around with and played with, and that's kind of a couture thing because you wouldn't get that in ready to wear.
That's beautiful, that top in 27.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. I am seeing more of that Anna Karenina thing that you mentioned.
Yes.
As well, that real opulence and. These close-ups are actually incredible.
Because the little caps backwards that are worn backwards could almost be like those little
The
Russian
Prussian
military caps
yes.
that they wear.
Yeah, drummer boys.
What is them? Is that the?
What
Is that
is
someone's
that?
back?
Yes.
The sleeves.
Yes,
Yes,
it's
it's
yeah.
that.
It does feel like there's a lot going on at the back,
At
and
the
a lot of
back, yeah.
kind of cut away, which is very useful.
Yeah.
But then this is quite out of sequence.
Yes.
What, Carl, is that in the middle? Whereas this one coming, 31,
With the sleeve.
is beautiful again,
Yeah.
and Anna Karenina again. Lovely that. Silver lace, beaded,
That's
pearls,
just astonishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely
gold lame
beautiful.
belt, gold kid. Very sweet. Well, this pale grey is really,
Yes.
really pretty, isn't it? That ribbon.
So is this what we were talking about before? You know, wanting to be awe-inspired and completely sort of astounded by couture. Is this doing that for all of us then?
Oh yes.
I think it is about the detail, and that's the problem we see in couture online in a way, because you need to be up close, you need to be like,
But then you think in a way we've probably got a better view of these pieces than some of the people there, so you feel quite lucky in that sense.
I think it feels very relevant.
I think that
mean,
bag's too
again,
big.
actually. You know, the idea of extending it to, you know, other audiences, and you can see there'll be lots of people who'll be able to, again, sort of mimic the look.
Yeah.
In a way,
Not
because of the
that.
simplicity. not the obviously the decoration and
Yeah.
things like that, but the shapes.
The
and so
shapes,
on.
yeah, and the
You
shapes
can
will
see,
be good.
Yeah, the shapes will be
Wherever
good.
they
and-
hit the market, lovely.
So that people can have, you
Yeah.
know, the bag across the body
Yeah.
and all of those things, I think is really interesting about it.
When I was covering the couture shows, I always went backstage beforehand because it was just so much fun to stroke.
And she did
And
for
also-
ready to wear, I can tell you, always backstage asking the question.
Couture, you could look inside,
Does it feel different
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're at a
and
ready to
the
wear?
inside was often absolutely just as beautiful as the outside, and you could see the hand stitching. I mean, it It was like really looking, I mean, if you were a man, it would be like looking at the engine of a Rolls Royce.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing is the tailoring in it is very. It's very, for me. There's a lot about tailoring with
there is.
which I think is the other part of couture that sometimes gets forgotten, because you tend to think about the embellishments and things like that all of the time.
No, definitely.
If you think how men are accustomed to couture, they may be wearing their grandfather's suit, but it was made to measure for him. But because they have standard bodies, lucky things, you know, all the canvassing and all the buttonholes done with thread that's been pulled through a candle, and you know, all that is all in their heritage. Whereas we are really excited to find a dressmaker, aren't we?
It is interesting, that idea though. I think people have just got used to wearing clothes that don't fit them. Like you see it every day when you're on the tube or on the bus, men wearing suits where they don't fit them, but they clearly don't know that it doesn't fit them, like the armholes don't fit properly. And I think
they drop down here.
Yeah.
But that's the muscled up Mr. Beckham arm. Did you see him at Wimbledon? Everything ripping his arms.
He's obviously not having handmade suits. Though.
He's just been to the gym one more time. That's just done it.
He can certainly afford them.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, I just think it's such an alien concept though I know it's a minority of people that can afford couture, but I think it'd be very alien even for a young person to think, oh, I've bought this, it doesn't quite fit me right, I'll take it to a dressmaker to adjust it. I think people wouldn't even think it's so alien now, which is a shame. I think people just don't have that concept that their clothes should fit them properly.
Like I said earlier, I think that unfortunately now we have to shape our bodies to fit clothes that are cheaply made. There are no skill in clothes that are bought on the high street anymore. They barely have bust darts in, and so if you put a body shape into them, it doesn't fit at all. And that's why I buy mostly vintage, and I have a dressmaker make it to fit my body, because my body needs some clothes to make it work.
But you wouldn't let your students have bust darts, would you? No, it'd have to be cut in seams and pieces, no bust darts. But the dry cleaners now, you sometimes lose good machinists to jobs in dry cleaners, so people are learning to have, you can get a very friendly machinist and a dry cleaner, I'm sure.
But I've said that to male friends when they say, oh, when you work in fashion, everyone's like, you work in fashion, where should I go shop? Always happens. And when they're asking where should they buy suits, I always say, I'll go here or here, and then I can go and get it taken in, and they look at me like you're mad, like
wouldn't even know where to start.
They would just like, why would I do that? You know, they want to buy a suit that will fit them. They don't want to have to go and I was like, it will look great. You know, if you can't afford to get a made to measure, which you obviously can't, go and do that. And I think people just find that a really, really odd concept.
But most dry cleaners now do very, very good alterations.
They do.
Yeah, they're really good.
But you need to have, in a way, I think what you're saying is, people are afraid because they don't feel like they have the language to use when they go in there.
They don't. At the most, I'll say, can you just turn this up and do this?
I also think some people maybe don't even realise what a fitted garment should look like on them, because they're so used to wearing.
But the answer is spandex. You see, every textile we touch nowadays, from denim to whatever, is full of a 3%, 2%, used to be 1% stretch. So that's why there's less need for the
construction, or everybody relies on the spandex underwear.
That as well.
But again, it's control. It's all about control of the body. I mean, some of those, the construction of the underwear stuff are practically Victorian. It's just that they're a bit more stretchy.
I think that's one of the things that's so interesting when you think about all the pressure with cosmetic surgery and magazines and so on to have the perfect body. So if you've got the perfect body, the clothes almost become secondary. You know, that's one of the. Whereas before, as you say, you used to have to rely on the clothes to be, or the undergarments to be constructed, to be able to allow things to happen.
Yeah, we've seen the decline of bespoke fashion and the rise of bespoke body.
Yes, I think
But then you have the women with the enormous boobs, the fake boobs, who have to have bespoke clothes because you just can't get, skinny and then massive.
Or they just undo a couple more buttons.
But that's what's nice to see here, is all these clothes feel like they're built for a body and they're built for...
Yes, and that's what you expect for couture, because I would imagine the couture buyer is not, an elfin, nubile teenager. I would imagine they are women with,
and they'll be flattering as well.
Yeah.
I think looking if you look at 64, that's quite an ageless. Like, she looks adorable, but that could be worn by...
It's got a sleeve. Oh my God, it's got a sleeve.
There's lots of those kind of, like, even 63, like these kind of more modest sleeves, lengths, and it's nice to see pieces, I think, like that.
I think if you are a Russian oligarch, you want to show off your daughter as well as your wife.
To So has this made us happy? Has this given us a bit of a lift? Because
Oh,
I know
yes.
everyone seems
It's
a
a bit
little
of a-
flat after Dios.
It's a bit of a palate cleanse, which is nice. It's, you know, I'm not, you know, you don't kind of go, which is it's a really good sign.
Yeah.
I think it deserves a clap. I think it's
Should we give it a clap?
Carl is clever after all.
What a note to
Spelt
end
with a
on.
K.
Carl is clever. Thanks guys, thank you.